We can't trust nutritionists and dietitians to help us to understand food. That's their job, but what they recommend will cause us to be sick and fat. And I can tell you that I used to be confused about what's healthy to eat. I'm not anymore. But the thing is, it isn't because I listened to a dietitian or a nutritionist. It's because I got sick and then I had to figure out how to be healthier. I had to go through the trouble of doing it for myself. Now, when I run into articles like this that still promote bad information, the kind of information that made me sick, I'm really annoyed and frustrated because this kind of stuff shouldn't still be what we're being encouraged to do. And I want to take a few minutes to show you why this is bad information and it's harmful information on top of that. And I want to help you to understand what actually helped me to heal my joints and to lose 80 pounds. The title of that article, it was the first thing that confused me, right? Because I was kind of not sure why they were trying to get us to just look at one egg, right? That confused me because I know for a fact when I go to a restaurant, typically the normal breakfast, if you go for the conservative, healthy breakfast, it's 2 eggs. And of course, you can get 3 or more if you go for a more fancy breakfast. But I couldn't figure out why the 10 foods that they were comparing, trying to be higher than, was 1 egg, right? Because I don't think that the average adult eats 1 egg. So obviously, I checked out the link where they were showing to see the data that said that, most of us are eating the right amount of protein. And I checked out that link because I wanted to know, what do you mean most of us are eating the right amount of protein? So if we look at that, you can see there it's saying that an adult woman weighing 150 pounds only needs to get 54 grams of protein. To me, that sounds a little low. And for a 180-pound man only needing 65 grams of protein, again, that sounds a little bit low. But the good news is, if you keep going, which I did because I was like, this can't be right, they tell us that in 2019, new research shows that those numbers were too low. But my problem is, and my question to you, Wellness Warrior, is if we only learned that in 2019, isn't that initial statement that most of us are getting enough protein a misleading statement? If we only learned that recently, that kind of implies to me that most of us are likely still under eating protein because I didn't actually see that research. I'm wondering, have any of you seen that research? Are you in the same situation that I'm in where, we don't know about this? Okay. So right away, this information is off, right? So if the information is off there, when we go back to the original article, what are we going to see? Since this article acknowledges that meat and fish are high in protein, that's terrific, and I appreciate that part. They are encouraging us to focus on the vegetarian sources, right? Because they think that those have been fully overlooked and we should be looking at those vegetarian. My first question to you is, are the vegetarian sources being overlooked? I'm going to really want to know from each one of you that's watching right now. When I'm going to go through the vegetarian sources that they give us, have you seen these before? Are these completely new foods that you didn't know were high in protein? Because I don't know if that's what your answer is going to be. My second question to you is, or the second question for this video is, why are we only now hearing about protein as being so super important when for decades our focus was on getting the fat as low as possible. That was the important macronutrient that we all need to be paying attention to. Why is it all of a sudden that they're pointing us at protein? And I'm not talking about bodybuilders. Bodybuilders have always been screaming about protein. This article is aimed at normal people, typical people, dieting people, my guess is going to be people who are trying to get their health and weight under control. Why is it all of a sudden that that's where they're focusing us? Well, there's 10 foods listed here, and we're going to go through them all. And I have to tell you that I'm excited because the first one, believe it or not, grains. And I was excited for this because, well, it's clearly helping us to see that you have your protein at 8 grams, right? You have your fat for your quinoa. The first one is quinoa, sorry, at the top, coming in at 3.6 grams per cup. So it's nice and low in fat, and it's nice and high, according to them, in protein at 8 grams per cup. And then we have 34.2 grams of carbohydrate in that. And of course, you also have your protein here in that sliced banana on a slice of that bread with sliced banana on it, just so you know what that is. That's supposed to be a representation of sprouted grain bread. Can't even see the bread on the banana slices. And it's 8 grams of protein, 1 gram of fat, and 22 grams of carbs per slice. And for 2 slices, sorry, I'm going to get it right, for 2 slices. Now, in order to get more than 2 grams of protein, in order to get more than 6, so you're adding 2 grams of protein for the first one, the quinoa. So the benefit of having quinoa, Wellness Warrior, over having eggs is you're getting an extra 2 grams of protein, right? It's costing you anywhere from 22 to 34 grams of carb. That seems like a high price to pay, considering that we know that carbs are inflammatory, right? And for those of you who are new here, guess what? Carbs are inflammatory. That's a high price I think we're paying for an extra 2 grams of protein, right? We also know that carbs cause insulin resistance. Really, really bad for the body. Insulin resistance is the step before diabetes, the step before metabolic health issues like PCOS, Alzheimer's, poor heart health. The list goes on and on. People have skin problems. The list goes on and on. Insulin resistance being involved. And yet somehow grains are the first thing they're pointing us towards with that high carb count. Now, grains are also nice and low in fat, right? Which is supposed to make us happy because they're still probably playing on that idea that most of us are still in the low fat world. But can I point out that the lower fat content of a food means that you're going to be much less satiated when you're eating that food. So for those of us who are trying to lose weight, that's a problem, right? Because if I'm less satiated when I eat my meal, I'm going to be hungry sooner. And therefore, I'm going to go looking for more to eat. And am I going to have another meal? Most of us are not going to do that. Most of us are going to go have a snack. And that's a whole other problem it's going to come up. So I'm not going to talk on that right now. But I just want to point out that 2 eggs would have given us 10 grams of fat and 12 grams of protein, which would have been really satiating because they do mention that protein is also very satiating in the article. One of the good reasons they gave for eating protein is they started the article off talking about that. So you would have had 10 grams of fat and 12 grams of protein to nice satiation just from 2 eggs. I want us to be a little concerned, right? Because the way that they're starting this article off with grains is setting us up to want to eat more. And I think that for the people who are trying to lose weight, that's going to lead to problems. Now, the next set of foods, and I'm sorry, my words are on top of the slides already. Not supposed to be like that, but we're going to roll with it. Um, so the top image, that's a taco, is supposed to represent black beans. This is the image that they put. The middle image is some nice little balls of their dates stuffed with peanut butter. And then the last one is a plate of pasta. And the peanut butter is what they're aiming at for the second image. And the chickpea pasta is what they're aiming at for the third image. And so for each of these things, the black beans is 8 grams of protein, the peanut butter is 7.7 grams of protein, and the chickpeas, a nice 14 grams of protein. But the serving sizes really come into play here. The black beans, you need half a cup to get 8 grams of protein. I'm looking at that taco, maybe, yeah, if there could be 8 gram, half a cup if you really stuffed it, but I'm doubting that doesn't look stuffed enough. So I feel like the images give you the impression that you're going to have more than you're going to have. And I know that when I used to have tacos, well, first of all, they were meat. But if I were to make, even with meat, I wasn't putting enough meat in my taco to give me the amount of protein I needed per day. And as the nutritionist points out at the beginning of this article, they point out that protein in meat and fish is much higher. So the protein in meat was coming in at something like 20 something per whatever meat they chose. I think it was ground meat. And it was coming in at like 17 for the fish, depending on what kind of fish. So you're going to do so much better if you actually focus on putting meat in that taco. That right? So the peanut butter, we're only allowing 2 tablespoons, and the chickpea pasta, it was 2 ounces. My problem with this wellness warrior is that, first of all, we're probably not going to get enough beans to reach that protein count. That's a problem. Second of all, when you eat peanut butter, you usually eat it with something else. So I love the fact that they're showing us that it's coming with something else. But I think that when people go, oh, wow, peanut butter is a good source, and look at the recipe that they're showing, they're not realizing that, well, now we've just added more sugar and added more problems. I think the most interesting thing to me was that the carb count for these 3 things, although they're low, will end up being kind of high-ish, especially the pasta. I don't know anyone who eats 1 serving of pasta, because when you make 1 serving of pasta, it looks like a plate for a child. So you end up eating many more servings than what this would suggest that you would be eating. Now, obviously, if we go forward and we look at the almonds, which is, I like these nuts and seeds, and I used to eat them a lot until I figured out that I shouldn't be doing that. But again, you're seeing that I'm getting the same amount of protein from almonds, but I'm adding sugar for no reason. Why would I do that? Almost 3 grams of carbohydrate for no reason if I'm getting the same amount of protein. And that bottom image, again, love the pictures because they show you that most people don't just have pumpkin seeds, because that's what that's supposed to represent. We're going to have it in bread. We're going to have it in salad. We're going to sprinkle it in other things, but we're not just going to sit there and eat pumpkin seeds, or at least the average person isn't. But again, you're getting 2.5 extra grams of protein for the 2.3 grams of carbs that you're getting in. Now, what I love about these 2 is that the fat content is higher, but what's frustrating about these 2 is that they're plant fats and not animal fats, which means they don't translate to our human bodies exactly the same way. And because they don't translate to our human bodies exactly the same way, they can cause problems when we try to build ourselves with those fats, right? I used to eat a lot of almonds and pumpkin seeds on my keto lifestyle because I was like you, believing that they were healthy to eat. And a lot of keto desserts are made with almond flour and all kinds of actually flours that are from nuts and like they're lower in carbohydrate. And so therefore, they're giving us less carbohydrate, which is what we're trying to do on a keto diet. We're trying to have less sugar so we can get into that ketogenic state. The problem is we are not letting ourselves understand that seeds have things in them that are not best for us. For example, almonds are very high in oxalate. Now, although most people probably haven't ever heard of oxalates, they are little crystals that, when they are high in your body, wreak havoc. I'm not going to go into the details of it. I have a video on the channel with Sally Norton that I talk about this. You can go check that video out. Maybe I'll try to link it in the description because I didn't think about that till right this minute. But that is a really negative scenario for our body. Now we fast forward or skip to the next one, which is pumpkin seeds. And they have oxalates in them, so they're not free from that problem. But they also have tannins and cyanide, which are anti-nutrients that harm our health, and they slow down our biological processes, do all kinds of negative things to our body. But yet we're being told that this is a great source of protein. No, Wellness Warrior, it really isn't. We shouldn't be doing that to ourselves. Now, then we have the next one, which is going to be the soy, right? You need a half a cup of soy to get 22 grams of protein, 11 grams of fat, and 4.9 grams of carbohydrate. And the problem that I have with soy is that Dr. Berry has helped us to understand that soy binds to estrogen receptors in men and women and causes negative health repercussions. And he just basically said we should not be having any soy products, but yet soy is like one of the major places that a lot of vegetarians, from my understanding, get their protein, right? I mean, yes, they eat all the other things, but soy is used a lot in vegetarian dishes and vegan dishes. And I really feel like we need to let ourselves understand that the danger of doing that, because, well, honestly, I feel like we just don't enough look at any kind of data that's against the thing that we happen to be doing in this moment. And we need to stop doing that, Wellness Warrior. Now, the next thing I want to talk about are the dairies. And yes, on keto, again, we are encouraged to have our dairy. So we get 6.8 grams of protein from that's supposed to represent cheddar cheese on the top there, and 20 grams of protein from that's supposed to represent Greek yogurt on the bottom. But you're getting, not, well, you actually, this is good because you're only getting 0.9 grams of carb for the cheddar cheese. You're getting 6.3 grams for the Greek yogurt, which you probably could find one with less sugar if you really work hard at it. So I think they do exist. But my problem still is, well, it's a new problem. I've recently figured out that protein that's coming from the source that is dairy, that's a milk product. That's dairy, milk products. And we're getting this from the milk of the animal, whether it's a cow, goat, humans also make milk. And so the question is, well, why do we animals make milk for our babies? And it's to help them to grow quickly, right? So what I've recently learned is that dairy actually can increase insulin production. Now, different dairy is going to have different impact on the insulin production. And so we need to verify these things. Like, from what I'm understanding, the more whey, the more likely that you're going to have insulin resistance problems with dairy. But the other thing I'm going to point out is that's one element. The entire product, like milk that's coming from an animal for its baby, the entire product is for growth, right? So what does it do to human growth hormone or any of the other processes in our body that are towards growing the baby? because I'm no longer a baby. And in the wild, once an animal is weaned onto food, whether it's in the human, well, no, we can't say about humans yet. I'll tell you why. But in the animal world, whether it's any kind of mammal that weans onto regular food, they stop drinking milk. They don't drink milk ever again. It's only us humans, here we go. It's only us humans that end up drinking milk of other animals and turning it into products that we can use and eat and consume without really understanding. But that was for quick growth, right? So if we don't understand why the things that we are eating, like what they were originally meant for, these kind of mistakes are going to keep happening. Like the protein that we're trying to get, we need to understand the purpose and the point of that protein.
Basically, we realize that when you look at a protein, there are two factors. One is what's the composition of those 9 essential amino acids, and the other is what's its bioavailability. How well do we digest it and absorb it? With animal proteins, the digestion absorption is pretty close to 100. It's usually 95% or higher for all animal proteins. For plant proteins, though, it gets into, you need to realize that in a plant, the protein is there for the purpose of the plant. And so a lot of it is attached to fibers, to structures. Plants have proteins attached to the leaves and the stems and the roots and the flowers and the seeds. And when you start to isolate that, if you just eat it in a raw form, it may only be 60-70% available because we can't digest the fiber. So if you look at wheat bran on a cereal box and say it was a wheat flour, and it says there's 4 grams per serving, there's actually less than 2 that you can actually absorb. The digestibility is where a lot of people have been focusing, but I have a big problem with the amino acid scores because they're incredibly low. They're way too low. And so they're established by the World Health Organization, by the FAO, which is really designed to prevent malnutrition in Africa, where we know from our Institute of Medicine that the essential amino acid scores are much higher than that, should be. You mentioned stable isotopes a little bit ago, or tracers. We know from stable isotope studies that all those FAO amino acid scores are too low. And so that's part of the equation that we're not telling people either.
So, first of all, that we only are able to access 60 to 70% of that protein. So we're being pushed here to look at these plant sources. And I've heard people talk about as low as 40% access. So if we can't get the protein out of the plant as easily as we would want to be able to get it, and then we add to it all these anti-nutrients like cyanide and tannins and oxalates and all these things that are in the plants, and these phytochemicals, and like the list goes on and on, Wellness Warrior, about the things that are in vegetation that are blocking us, not even not helping us, blocking us from getting what we need out of the plant. And I feel like we're just being pulled along, right? And so your body is asking you for protein, right? And then the source of protein that we're giving it, we can't get all the protein out. Whereas if we had an animal source, we'd be getting 95%. If we're lucky, we're getting 50% out of these options that we're being given. And then we're also adding carbohydrate unnecessarily to our body by using that as our source of protein. We are malnourished, Wellness Warrior. That's what that means. If we're not taking in the amount of protein for our body that we need. Like he just said, the numbers are too low. They're barely at the level to make us not be malnourished, but most of us are not even getting that because we are using these plant sources as the source of our protein, right? So even if we were going to get 90 grams, which again, if you watch that, I watched that entire video, and he kind of leaned towards we should be trying to get more, not less, not even just up to the line. He's saying we should be trying to get more if we want to flourish, right? So most of us are so malnourished, even though we are overweight, even though we are obese, we are malnourished. This is the oxymoron of the century, that in North America, you are overweight and malnourished at the same time. And it's because we do not understand our food. We don't understand our food and what our body is actually asking for. I want you to consider something. Can you imagine that you work really hard at work every week for your employer and you give it your all and expecting that you're going to be paid at the end of 2 weeks with money? But instead, they decide to give you stock options or free merch or a dream vacation. That's what they give you. No money. This is what you're getting this week, Violet. Sure, there's value in stock options. There's value in a dream vacation, but I can't buy groceries with that directly. So now I'm going to have to take this vacation and stocks and merch and try to sell it to get the money back out of it, right? So that I can buy groceries and pay the electricity bill. Does that make any sense, Sawyer? That's making extra work for you that wasn't even something that you previewed having to do when you signed up for this company, because you were expecting to get paid in money. So if they did that to you, I mean, obviously you're going to take it and you're going to work it because you need to pay your bills, but you're not going to be happy. And very likely, I would hope you'd be looking to change jobs. Guess what? Our body can't change jobs because our body is not what's controlling what's coming in. It's us. We keep giving our body grains, legumes, seeds, and soy and dairy products when it's looking for meat and fish, right? It's looking for animal protein. And we keep putting our body in the scenario where it has to work real hard to scrounge together whatever it can scrounge together to keep building us, to keep moving us forward, so that we can finally go out and get some real food, right? Some meat and fish. And what happens is that we think that we need to eat a snack, and we'll eat some cookies or granola bar or something, and we won't give our body what it's asking for. The reason that we are constantly hungry is because we don't give our body what it's asking for. It's asking for animal protein. It's asking for animal fat. We keep making our body work real hard when it shouldn't have to. And if the garbage that we're eating is highly processed, which is a lot of the time what we're eating, even on keto, I go to the grocery store and I see these packages say keto, 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 and you flip them over and there's still ingredients in this highly processed food that we shouldn't be eating. Because when we give our body highly processed food, the food attacks our body, right? It is so quickly absorbed that it just knocks us, like our body doesn't know what to do with that safely. And so a lot of it gets stored. It gets stored away, right? Because there's chemicals in it and there's preservatives in it and there's things in it that shouldn't be there. It's full of sugar, and so our body just ends up storing this stuff because it doesn't have, so it impacts us it makes our body react. Our insulin is all over the place. Our body is reacting, and then it ends up in storage anyway. And then we don't understand why we can't lose weight. We don't understand why our illnesses continue to progress, because we're eating food that are so easily absorbed and so very low in nutritional value, if they have any nutritional value at all. Because some of the stuff we're eating doesn't have the nutritional value that we think it has, because companies are really good at writing things on packages that make it seem like there's real food in there, that there's quality food in there, when in fact there's not. And when you look at a package and you can't understand half the words, it's because it's not real food. Long story. Focusing on protein without explaining the difference between plant protein and animal protein is a way that companies can confuse us. And when they confuse us, they can control us. They can get us to buy the wrong things. They can get us to damage our health. They can get us to be in a lot of nice situations for them, bad situations for us, right? The solution is so simple. And it was even stated in the article. The food with the highest source of protein is meat and fish. They said it at the very beginning of the article. Eggs, for their size, actually have a good amount of protein, and it's bioavailable protein. That is also true. Here's the problem with eggs, and I have no problem with eggs. I eat eggs every day, but there is a problem with them using an egg for this article that leads us down a garden path that we don't actually realize we're being led down. First of all, as I said earlier, one egg is 6 grams of protein. But if we go with the data that I'm more hearing about now than I've heard about before, that talk to Dr. Lehman's point that the RDIs for or the RDAs for protein are super low, then what ends up happening is that you end up, if you're trying to be healthy, saying you're going to do somewhere between 1 and 2 grams of protein for every pound you weigh. And if you do that, well, then all of a sudden the numbers work out much better. And so now that would mean that 120 number that they showed, or even a person could probably even do 150 if they weighed 150 pounds, and that would be fine. So what would that mean for me if I was trying to get my protein from eggs? If that was the only source, even if I wasn't going to touch the red meat because I'm scared of it, and I'm not going to touch fish because I just don't like it. If I was trying to get all my protein from eggs, guess what happens? I have to eat more than 2 dozen eggs a day. And there's 2 problems I see with that. First of all, in one sitting, I wouldn't be able to do it. It would be too rich. So there's protein, very satiating. Fat, very satiating. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be able to get through all the eggs just because they're so rich. But the second problem that I see is that I would, if I want to get through them, because that's how much protein I need per day, I'd have to split them up into different meals. And now I'm having more than 1 insulin rise every day. Again, I'm not afraid of my insulin rising a bit from protein, but all of this on top of the fact that if I'm talking to a vegetarian who's allowing eggs in for their animal protein, they're still eating carbohydrates. So now, what's happening in your day? I feel like we need to understand that with the amount of fat that would have come in with those eggs, if we still allow a lot of carbohydrate for the rest of my foods, now maybe again, you're going to do those eggs and you're going to be like me and you're not going to be able to eat anymore. And then that's what you would have eaten. Probably not. You're probably going to say, maybe I have a dozen eggs, maybe I have 6, and then I have these other things. And now we have a good amount of fat coming in from the eggs, and we have a lot of carbs coming. So whenever you get into the story of high fat, high carb, that's pretty much the recipe of the standard American diet, and you're putting your body in a dangerous position. So that was one of the reasons I didn't like them using one egg as the example here. I think, the other thing that I want to point out, just to reiterate this, is that the average person doesn't just have one egg. But if I'm looking at one egg as the how much protein do I need, it's really it's not putting enough emphasis on how much protein we actually need. Because Wellness Warrior, we need a lot of protein. We need a good amount of protein. I'm shocked at how much protein that I'm having right now and feeling stronger than ever. And my weight has remained stable, right? So with very, very reasonable servings of meat or fish, you can have your 100 grams, 150 grams, sorry, 200 grams if you're male, like however much protein that you actually need. With meat and fish, you can very reasonably have that in a normal size, right? And it's going to come along with the correct fat, because the fat that comes with that meat, the same way the fat that came with that egg, it's the correct fat. It's what you should be eating. It's going to build you the right way, right? Now, why? Why would they not want us to know this? Why would we go through all these flips and backflips and shenanigans to help us to believe that we should be eating plant protein instead of eating animal protein? It's because it would make us too healthy to take advantage of, Wellness Warrior. Yeah. If we ate the right things, how would they manipulate us? How would they control us? How would they do it? We'd no longer need all the garbage that they sell us as food, right? Because it's not food. And if we don't eat the garbage, we don't need to go see the nutritionist or the dietitian who's telling us what to eat, because we wouldn't be eating the garbage, and right? Our health would improve, our weight would improve. So if we weren't eating the junk and we don't need the nutritionist, we wouldn't need the gym anymore either, at least not for staying thin, right? Because that's another big ridiculous story that we're fed, all that we need to work out to lose weight. No, you don't. You need to eat properly to lose weight. So the gym trainers would lose some customers, right? Because they would only have access to the bodybuilders and the people who want to sculpt their body, but they wouldn't have access to some of the busier moms or the busier people that like to get their activity and exercise from playing with their kids or going and doing fun activities that push their body, right? They wouldn't have access to those people anymore. So they'd lose some money. And we can't forget pharma. Can you imagine if the 66% of women and 40% of men who are between the ages of 34 and 18 who are on medication came off their medications? Because that's what the numbers are, by the way. 66% of women and 40% of men. Like, you're not even 35 yet and you're on medication. And if we take away the women who are on birth control, I'm sure that number would drop to be similar to the men. That 40% of our population is taking some kind of medication that's about health, like fixing their health already between the age of 18 and 34. That's a ridiculous amount of people. And it shouldn't be that high, right? But why is it that high? Because we eat the wrong food. We're eating the wrong food. We're going to ruin our body. We ruin our body. Pharma steps in to save us. And don't forget, medical's right behind, right? If whatever you're taking, after you've taken it for years and years and it didn't solve the problem because you're still eating the wrong thing, then there's a procedure that they can do to help you out. Wellness Warrior, we need to change this right now. And I'm going to tell you exactly what to do to change this right now. You need to eat healthy food. And the healthy food is meat, fish, and eggs. Why? Why are those the healthy foods? Because they're the only ones that are actually food. Yes, I'm fighting really hard to change the definition of food. Plants are not food. Meat, fish, eggs, right? Poultry falls under meat, by the way, in case somebody was wondering. That's the healthy food. Everything else is garbage. Everything. And if you were eating those things and only those things, there would no longer, food companies, all companies would not be able to manipulate us when it came to what we're eating, what we're putting in our mouth. And what we put in our mouth is also the medications. All of that manipulation would fall away. Right? And we would only be taking medications if we actually needed it, if we had some kind of true medical, so metabolic, not metabolic, if we had some true genetic condition, or right, something that was, maybe we were in an accident of some kind, or something happened, or then we would, yes, medication. But beyond that, it should not be that people between 18 and 34 are on that much medication. That should not be a thing. We are doing something wrong that is a thing. If you really want to know what solidified my mind on this point, you could check out my video on how the dietitians have been lying to us for money. They were being paid, and somebody caught them and it came out, and I made a video about it. It's linked down below, and I'm going to put at the end of this video that you can go check that one out. We actually can change this wellness war. It doesn't have to look like this. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am so happy to see that there are so many of you here. Please like the video. Click that like button so that YouTube knows that this is valuable content. I would love to see. There are 57. I think there were 60 something of us before. So if we could have 57 to likes, I would be so happy. I want to just take a moment to say hello to Patrick. How are you doing, sweetheart? I'm glad that you're able to be here. Apple Peel is saying hello. Let's see. Lynn Scott. Hi, Lynn. How are you doing? I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so that I can read it. If you put Q in front of the questions, that makes it easier for me to be able to read. And it looks like my camera stopped, so I'm going to stick on this one. It makes it easier for me to be able to read. And also, sorry, it makes it easier for me to see that that's a question. It makes it easier for me to be able to read. That's funny. Okay, so Lynn is saying, unfortunately, meet a vegan at a party. Okay. And okay, you met a vegan at a party. He told me plants have more protein than meat and that beef stays in the gut for 7 years. He got that from a nutritionist. So can I just again point it out that we are so lied to that we have no clue that we're being lied to. And if we are not able to put it forward, like to figure out that these lies are causing our health problems, we're going to keep believing stuff like that. The idea that meat will spend 7 years in the gut, when meat is actually the easiest digestible food that we eat. So meat, all the fish, eggs, they're easily digestible. Anything animal protein, our body digests easier, right? And it just amazes me that these lies are still out there. Hello, Raven Blackwood. I'm glad to see you here today. It's Easter. So Easter Monday, I should say. So happy Easter Monday to everybody. I don't know if you guys are off or not. I'm off. So that's why I've jumped in here today. And I'm just looking forward to having a chat with everybody. So questions. I would love to have more questions. Let's see. Okay. Hello, Jay. How are you doing? You've been full carnivore for 2 years and you've never been healthier. I haven't made 2 years yet. I'm like going into month number 3, I believe. I need to actually go back and write down the date. I know what day I started, write back down the date of when I started so I can keep track of my carnivore journey, because I definitely am looking forward to being able to talk more about what other improvements I find in myself. But going keto, definitely the improvements were my joints no longer in pain. And that was the most important thing. That was the reason I started keto to begin with, was I learned that I had an inflammation problem that was causing my joint pain. So I definitely want to double check if any other things improve. I can say already the one thing, which I had energy before I started keto, got a bump in energy. And then now that I'm carnivore, I feel like I've gotten another bump in energy. One of the cool things about eating properly is the energy and the better health that you feel. And so, can I just point out that not a gym person, I don't like the gym. I'm one of those people that I'm going to do all kinds of like I'm going to do all kinds of activities to try to get my body into a good place, right? And then I'm going to I like just being outside. I like doing activities with the kids or even on my own. Sometimes I'll go for a longboard ride just by myself because I like to ride my longboard in the summer. But I realized since I went keto that instead of going once a week and then needing to recover because my joints hurt, I was going like several times a week. And since going carnivore, the thing that changed for me is that I had a rebounder. I've had it in my basement for so long. It's sitting there and I would see it all the time. But for some reason, going carnivore, I had extra energy in the morning and I was like, oh, let me just start jumping on this thing. And now, honestly, I jump almost every single day. Sometimes when I'm busy running around, like this weekend with the holiday, I didn't jump every single day, which I missed a day. But no, I missed 2 days this weekend. But it's just amazing to me how when you feel good and you feel strong and you have energy, you want to do more stuff. So let's see. We have still I rise. Exactly, Jay. More meat for us. More meat. I'm not really sure what that's. Oh, I think it's a conversation that's going back in and forth. Let's see. So do we have any questions today? Because if we don't, I'm more than happy to go and hang out with my kids because it is Easter. So, but if we have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Hello, hello, Isaac. You don't believe in OMAD. I just don't feel good on it. Honestly, it's really more of a convenience thing and something that you either slowly move into or not. I feel like people who try to force themselves to do one meal a day, that's what OMAD stands for, one meal a day, end up not liking it. I didn't force myself. Like I started off 2 meals a day in my normal standard American diet life because I start work really early. And so I would just go to work, whatever, and have lunch and then have supper. But when I started keto, I wanted to do it correctly because I was trying to heal myself and I was told to have 3 meals. So I reintroduced breakfast in order to do keto. So I was doing 3 meals a day at the beginning. And very quickly, I was just like, I am not hungry in the morning. And I just dropped it again. The thing that was interesting to me, though, is that lunch and supper, first of all, ended up getting closer and closer together because what would happen is I would go to work and then at some point I'd have lunch, then supper. And eventually I was taking more time to get hungry for lunch. Eventually, it turned out I was just not hungry for lunch. And so when it was like an hour between when I would have lunch, when I would have supper, I was like, whatever, I'm just going to have supper when I get home. And I stopped bringing lunch with me to work. Oh my gosh, I would have to say I haven't had 2 meals. So I'm 6 years keto, I believe. No, 18. Yeah, I'm 6 years total of doing healthy. So it's been 5 years that I haven't had a lunch. I just don't. right? And I mean, as a general rule, I did have lunch on vacation last year. So I had lunch and supper because there, everything was lean. So I ended up eating more and I spread it out between the two meals. But besides in that scenario where all the meat was super lean and I needed to eat more to get through that, I was doing, I've always done 2 meals. Sorry, 1 meal. So I don't think that 1 meal a day is a necessary thing to do. I like doing it for multiple reasons. I don't like cooking, kind of lazy that way. I've never liked cooking. I'm a good cook. I just don't like cooking. So I know people say, oh, because you don't know how. I really know. I know how to cook. I just don't like it. My dad's a chef. I know how to cook. I just, yeah. So I feel like for me, that always helped me to feel my best. And still, I don't care to eat the other meals because I'm actually not hungry. So it works out easier. I got there slowly. And then once I got there, I was comfortable there. I'm not opposed to eating if I'm hungry. So in the course of the years that I've been doing this, have there ever been occasions where I got up and I was just hungry for some reason and I ate earlier? Yes, it has happened. And I'm trying to think, I know when I was sick and then I recovered, there were a few days in there because I had, the big C. When not the big C, well, how would you call that? The 2020 thing, I had that. And when I got when I got better, a few days in, like I noticed I was hungry and I had a earlier meal. I didn't end up having 2 meals because I just ate earlier, but I ate my normal amount and it was fine. And eventually my time of eating migrated back to when I normally eat. I normally eat somewhere between 7 and 9 on a normal day when there's nothing special going on. And if there's stuff happening, I could eat earlier or I could eat later depending on what's happening. If I have a party or if I have a meeting or something and I know I'm going to be not I'm going to be I'll if I'm hungry enough, I'll eat before the meeting. If I'm not hungry, I'll eat after the meeting at 10. I don't really have a clear cut, I need to stop eating at that time. I only eat once a day. So I know my insulin will reset itself. So you're asking if we need more. You're saying that we need more protein than once a day. We need an amount of protein. Our body doesn't work on clocks. I know that it's hard for us to understand that because we are programmed to eat at certain times of day. And then because we eat at certain times of day, first of all, psychologically, we're expecting food. And so we look forward to it. And so we get hungry, and that's normal and normal for everybody. And then the other piece of the puzzle, though, is that because we eat on a schedule, when we eat carbohydrates every day, then what the other thing that happens is that when our body is looking for food and we give it the food that it's looking for and there's carbs in it, our body was looking for food. So that's protein from animals, so meat or fish or eggs, and we gave it plant stuff, it puts it away. And this is like, there's lots of doctors talking about this. You have to take my word for it. You can go watch Dr. Barry, Dr. Fung, Dr. Berg, Dr. Westman. Like, there's lots of doctors talking about this. If you overeat carbohydrates, Dr. Bickman actually has been clearer than anyone else on that topic. That when you eat carbohydrates beside your protein, your body gets pushed into an insulin high scenario, and then your body is going to end up putting away too much of that energy that came in, and the building blocks that came in is going to get sequestered in fat cells, and you will be pushed to get more food quickly because your body didn't get access to it. So we need to understand how the body's functioning if we're going to be able to help us appropriately, right? Because our body wants us to be healthy. And yes, Pat, I know that what's her name, Rose, that I interviewed, mentioned that sometimes she'd go more than a day without eating, right? And so, and I know for sure that there have been occasions where, for whatever reason, I get home, it's later, I'm not hungry anymore, and I just don't eat till the next day. It's not a big deal. And sometimes I plan it, sometimes I don't plan it, and it's not a big deal. So I think I think it's just about everybody doing what's the most comfortable. So, and that's fine, Jay. You know, again, this is what's interesting about health, right? And about the information that we have. One of the things that we have to think about too, and Jay, I don't know where you started, because you might have been at a healthy weight, and you might have been in a really healthy situation and did carnivore because you were trying to be healthier, or you may have been trying to overcome a medical something or overcome a weight something. First of all, I will say that depending on why you come to keto or carnivore, the instructions you get might be slightly different. So when I came into keto, I found Dr. Westman. He was one of the first people. Fung and Westman were like the two first people that I found. Berg came very closely after that, and Barry came very closely after that. And Dr. Westman specifically said, you should only eat when you're hungry. And he wanted us to let ourselves start to learn, when are you actually hungry? And I feel like most of us don't actually wait until we're hungry. We eat when it's time. But I took Dr. Westman to heart. And eventually Dr. Berg said similar things in his videos, but he even added to it. He pointed out that if you shorten your eating window, then that longer non-eating window that you have, so that fasting period, because it will turn into a fasting period at some point, because it's long enough for your body to get into processes. This is another thing that I want to point out. I think that a lot of people think that fasting is just not eating, but that would mean that if I ate at 10 a.m. and then I ate at noon and then I ate at 6, you'd say that I fasted. No, my body was processing food. And it's not because I'm not putting food in my mouth that I'm fasting, right? You need to have a significant amount of time between meals for that to be fasting, because when you have that significant amount of time, your body goes into doing certain processes that it's not doing when your body is processing food. Processing food is energy intensive, and cleaning up the body is energy intensive. And so one of the things that I learned from watching Dr. Berg was that if you give yourself more time between meals, not only will your body be able to tap into the fat on you, so help you to lose weight, but your body will be able to repair things. And over the years, Dr. Ekberg came along into my life, and he also showed that same information. He went even deeper in on that information to help us to understand that our body can actually clean itself up. It can actually heal itself if we give it the right food. So the actual food, protein, animal protein, and the time that it needs. We want things so quickly, and we try to force our body to do stuff that it's not going to be able to be forced to do, right? And that's why a lot of people feel really, really great on one meal a day. I know I feel amazing on one meal a day. Still I Rise is saying that they feel amazing on one meal a day, right? And I feel like if we don't understand that there's a benefit, an actual benefit to doing one meal a day as often as possible, then we're not going to know that, and the thing is, do you have to do it every single day? No, you don't have to do anything. You're going to do whatever you want to do. I think as long as you're eating quality food, then whatever you're doing is better than what you were doing 2 years ago, 10 years ago, when we were eating all the garbage. But it's like, what's the next step up? I feel like this is the issue that a lot of people don't stop and think about, right? Is that the next step up is allowing my body even more time where it can process properly and clean up properly and do the things that I want it to do. Because no matter what we eat, while my body is processing the food, it is not cleaning up. Well, I'm not going to say zero, because that's ridiculous. Of course, it's cleaning up a little bit, but not intensely. And what Dr. Ekberg showed, and if I can find the video, I'll try to link it somewhere. But the Dr. Ekberg actually showed that at some point you go from having, a 5% increase or a 10% increase in cleanup to like a 500% increase. And some of those numbers jump really quick in a difference of hours. That's the reason to give yourself, if you can, one meal a day, or even just a very, very short eating window, like 4 hour short eating window instead of a 6 or 7 hour. Like the closer you get that eating window together, the more possibility you get of getting to that point where your body is in super cleanup mode. And here's the thing that we need to be careful about. We think that just because we decided to eat the right thing, that our body is automatically no longer insulin resistant. That is not true. First of all, if you still have weight to lose, you are absolutely, yes, still insulin resistant. But second of all, if you have damage internal and your insulin resistance is related to the damage, is related to what happens to our body when we have damage for long periods of time, cortisol levels are out of whack, macrophages have been depleted, like all kinds of things are happening in the body as your body's trying to protect you, but also that unfortunately lead that our insulin resistance is not just going to disappear. We have to help our body regulate our insulin levels. And no matter what you eat, you have an insulin rise, right? Like that's across the board. There will be an insulin rise. For some of us, even though the carbs are super extremely low, they can still be enough with spices and all kinds of stuff that we put on our food. And don't forget that, yes, eggs have, carbohydrates. Like, so sometimes that little bit of carbohydrate that's coming in is still enough to, unfortunately, spike some people. So better, if there's going to be one high amount of insulin happening, let it happen in one meal. That's the point that I'm making. And I belabored it, so I'm going to stop. There's an L. So there's an elephant in the mushroom. That's an interesting name. OMAD works if you eat enough. My meal is 300 grams meat, 30 grams fat minimum, and a couple of eggs. Never felt better, and 3 autoimmune diseases gone. No IBS, no Shriner's disease, no ME, not sure what that one is. After 20 plus years, ME, muscular something. Muscular something? I'm not sure. ME. If you're still here, you can let me know what that ME stands for. You and you go on to say symptom free, 5 years, and full of energy. So Isaac, I'm just going to say this last thing about the protein. If you don't believe that you can eat enough protein in one meal, it's probably because you haven't tried, and it's probably because you're trying to get your protein from not meat, fish, or eggs, because you absolutely can. So just try if you're open to it, but you don't have to. You could just eat your 3 meals and be fine. I would really love to know what ME stands for. If you could tell us that, that would be super cool. So, one truth seeking 8. I don't know what that is, so I couldn't tell you, but I will say that eating healthy food is always the answer, no matter what you're trying to solve. It can only help. But I don't know what that is. So you'd have to, and I don't know if you're taking medication for that. For everybody listening, if you take medication, you need to do this with your doctor, because as soon as you take the extra carbohydrates off your plate, out of your diet, your medication is going to be way too strong for most of the things that you're taking medication for. It's going to change completely the way your medication works. You need to do this kind of thing alongside a doctor if you take medication. Thank you, Pat, for reminding people to put QQQ. And I really hope that we have some likes that happened here, because I feel like there's a good number of people, 63. So I hope there's 63 likes on the video. Please don't forget to like. Okay, so here we go. Steak one day and burgers the next. Easy. Okay. I definitely, hello, Melissa Valentine. Nice to see you. Hello, Zach. How are you doing? So looking, I'm actually going to jump forward and look for questions and new names. Forever blessed. Hello. Do you find gluconeogenesis plays a big part in how you feel? I like how much fat how much fat do you consume with the meat, and what kinds of meat have different effects on you? Chicken versus beef versus pork, etc. So one thing that I can talk to, because I recently did a video with Dr. Chafee and he helped me to understand something when it comes to chicken versus beef versus pork. Because cows and other ruminant animals have multiple stomachs, they seem to be able to protect us better from the poor way that animals are fed. So what that means is on farms, because they don't, I should say on industrial farms, on those gigantic commercial farms, like the farms that are really about producing meat for the masses, because they don't feed the animals their appropriate diet and they feed them grains and all kinds of things that they shouldn't eat. And that's from the cows straight down to the fish. Like none of them are being fed what they should actually be being fed. They're being fed the cheapest possible thing that makes them the fattest possible. So it helps them to grow ridiculously fast. Because that's what's happening. The ruminant animals are the ones that, because of the different stomachs, can kind of get the toxic effects of eating the wrong food out of their system better than the non-ruminant, so the chicken and the pork. So that's the reason that Dr. Chafee says you should eat beef mostly. He does, however, say that if you have access to grass-fed, finished, and so naturally fed, finished pork and chicken, like if they're eating the right thing that they're supposed to eat. So chickens would also be eating little bugs and whatever, and pork, I believe, too, eat little, like if they're eating the right things, then there's no problem to eat those animals. It's just to know how they've been raised. So you need to believe the farm near you is doing the right thing. And if they're doing the right thing, no problem. On the other part of the question, how much fat do I consume? I eat the meat that comes along, the fat that comes along with the meat that I'm having, right? Like I just, if there's a piece of fat on the chicken, I eat it. If there's fat on the pork, I eat it. I just eat it, right? I don't take the fat off. The other thing that I do is I cook almost everything that I eat. I cook in lard or butter or both. If I'm looking for the flavor of the butter, but I don't want to use only butter because butter is harder to cook and you have to cook real slow because you don't want to burn it, blah, blah. So a little mix of lard and butter. And I find that it works out well. So yeah, that's what I do for my fat. I don't have any concerns about gluconeogenesis because Dr. Bickman explained to us that as long as you don't have carbs on the plate, your body isn't going to just spontaneously start turning your protein into sugar rather than using the ketones that you have in your body. Like it doesn't make sense. And your body will make enough glucose for itself normally, but it does that regardless of like whether you eat a lot of meat or not. Like your body will do it anyway. So the most important thing that Dr. Bickman pointed out is that we need to stop overloading ourselves with carbohydrate so that our body can actually do what it's supposed to do and feed us the way that or take care of us the way that it's trying to take care of us, right? To be healthy, which means that my body it knows better than me. Like just if I give it the right thing, it does the right thing. So you don't need to over concern yourself with eating too much carbohydrate. So if there are any more questions, sing it. How are you doing? Nice to see you here. So love that. 3 hamburgers for lunch. And you said, feel any different doing the rebounder? I sleep better at night. And when I'm consistent, you are now encouraging you. I'm so glad to be encouraging you. Let me see. Do I feel any different? I would probably say the only thing that I feel different is my excitement in the morning to get up is there. Like, so it's funny. Like, I was waking up and like I found myself just kind of waking up in the morning, and that what led to me having more time to jump on my rebounder, which, like you get up, you're early, you see it, it's like, oh, I could do this. And that's what I do. I do it every morning. It's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I just jump for, it's turning out to be somewhere between 11 and 20 minutes. I'll jump. And all I do is turn on a video and I just start jumping, and I don't look at the time until I start to feel tired. And if it's 11 minutes, I have no problem with it. If it's 20 minutes, I have no problem with it. I don't typically put on a video that's more than 20 minutes. So by the time, if the video finishes, then I know I've been doing 20 minutes. I need to get ready for work. So I can't just jump forever. So then I will just go about my day. But that's the cool part, is that since I've been doing carnivore, that was one of the realizations, is that I was just naturally waking up a few minutes before my alarm, which is annoying. And I was no longer snoozing. And so because I'm no longer snoozing, I had an extra 20 minutes that I could jump, which is really cool. I'm sorry. Do you know where the meat animals get parasites from? Plants, concentrated feeding operations are. Hmm, I don't. I honestly, I feel like industrial kind of farming is probably to blame for that. But I mean, obviously, things get sick. We get sick, right? So if we get sick, animals are going to get sick. We need to take care of our animals, and that's the most important thing. So let me see for. Oh, hello, Mary, Violando. I've heard that seniors need at least 25 grams of protein before our bodies can use any of it. My thoughts. My question would be why? Why do I need why do I need a certain amount before my body? I think I've heard that seniors need more protein in general, but I don't think that if you get a little bit, you can't use it. I don't think that's how that works. What I will say is that my understanding of why seniors need quote unquote more protein is because most of us have been under eating protein forever. And then when we get to the later part of our life where our body is a bit more fragile, right? We're older and we've not been doing as much, which is part of the problem that I see there. Because we've not been doing as much, then we're more prone to get sick and to have falls and whatever. So when they're telling you that seniors need more protein, what they're really talking about is they're trying to get us to eat more protein. I'm not a senior yet. I don't know why I said us, but they're trying to get seniors to eat more protein so that they will build more muscle, so that they will be sturdier and stronger and be able to hold themselves up. When I was doing the interview with Holly, one of the things she pointed out was that she felt stronger, she was actually able to do things for herself that she wasn't able to do before. And I think that's super cool. And so obviously I feel stronger, and I do believe I'm stronger than I used to be. And I feel like the rebounder helps because of course I'm jumping on it. I'm kind of using a good portion of my body. I do move my arms around too, just to make sure that I move them around, but I'm moving a lot of my body. When I climb, I'm using my entire body. So there's lots of things that we do that helps us to to strengthen ourselves. And if we're not eating enough protein, how are we going to support our body in doing these things? Or at least I know I wouldn't be able to support my body in climbing if I wasn't eating enough protein. And so I think the number one thing for us to think about is how do we get the right amount of protein? And going back to the research that Dr. Lehman was talking about says that we probably should be aiming at like 1 gram per pound that we weigh, somewhere around there. And if you're a little bit under, it's probably not the end of the world. If you're a little bit over, it's not the end of the world. It's like, if you're a little bit over, it's probably actually helpful according to him. So you're trying to do that. And then how do you feel afterwards? I can tell you, whenever I get, since I've been getting, and that started, my goodness, I started doing this like almost a year ago, no, it's not been that long. Almost 6 months, 7 months ago. I don't know if I got to the 6 months yet, but getting the right amount of protein has only helped me to feel better. And I'm sure that if you get the right amount of protein and it's bioavailable, that's the other thing about this article. The plant stuff is not as bioavailable. If it's bioavailable, how will you feel better? So looking for questions. Ready to go home. Do you recommend weight training for women? I'm 60 and want to maximize my mean muscle mass. Thoughts? Sure. If you like working out, you should work out. I think anybody who likes working out, likes being in the gym, should work out 100%. If you don't like it, my fear is you're going to go a few times and then you're going to not go because you don't like it. So, for people who don't like it, like myself, I don't like the gym. That's why I climb. That's why I'm doing the rebounder. I like challenging myself. I like learning new things. Like a few years ago, we bought skateboards, so not longboards, but skateboards, and we learned to try to do a few tricks. I learned a few tricks, and then it was like, okay, it was a fun diversion a few years ago. I'm a few years older, maybe a little bit more skittish, but my longboard I still ride all the time because I'm good at it. I've been riding it for years. Right? I have scooters, push scooters that I ride, bicycle that I ride. Like, I like doing things that challenge me. I like climbing because it's a challenge and it's fun, right? And we climb indoors at the bouldering facility, but we also go climbing usually at least once a year. We'll try to go and climb in the trees, and it's a fun experience. And it's just a lot of fun. So I feel like the thing is, do what challenges your body and helps you to gain muscle. And I know that climbing, it's only my body weight, but some of the climbs are hard enough that the time it takes you to climb and the amount of leverage you have, you're really putting pressure on your body and like pushing your body. And so a lot of fun. So yes, I would encourage you to build muscle. Like, we should always be trying to build and keep the muscle that we have. That's automatic, because women with more muscle on them seem to they tend to live longer, right? There's research that shows that. So because that's the truth, why would we not want to have muscle? And there's no age to work on your muscle, right? Like, for example, there are people that start working out later in life because they just didn't have the time before. They didn't have, right? And so if everything is important, and it's important for you to know what your goals are. Some people are working out because they want to look sculpted. Some people are working out just because they want to be strong enough to move things around their house normally. So you figure out what your goal is and you go for it. And you can always push yourself more, or you can always cut back, right? It depends on what you want. I'm not sure where this conversation started, but I would like to kind of chime in on the gut bacteria scenario, because one thing that gets misrepresented is this idea that we need to eat for our gut bacteria, and we don't realize that it's the other way around. Whatever we eat determines the gut bacteria that we will have. And they've shown that, it was in a book. I think that I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's in a book from Georgia Aid that I'm going through. But I know I've heard this more than one place, where they've shown that whatever you eat, as it changes, like, so as your diet plan changes, your gut microbiome changes. So if you, and it's days, it's not years, it's days. So if I don't eat veg, which I've done before, I did carnivore years ago. I did it for 2 months straight. And then I reintroduced veg. And what happened? I was bloated. I was gassy. My gut was not used to it anymore. right? And I had issues. And then after that period of time, my veg intake was much less. So after I did carnivore, I realized I don't need that much veg. And it was much less in terms of like I had like 2 or 3 different things that I was still eating. And anytime Pat made something that was outside of those 2 or 3 things and I was eating with him, again, my body was reacting. And eventually I just realized that if I want to keep something in my diet plan, it has to be there at least once a week. Maybe every other week I can still manage it. But if you go longer than 2 weeks, my gut microbiome is no longer. So we need to be careful because they will sell us all kinds of products to neutralize and accelerate and improve and whatever your gut, and your gut is dependent on what you're eating. That's part one. And part two, if you're eating things that will stay longer in your gut and cause fermentation and all kinds of bad things to happen in there, you are going to bloat and you are going to have discomfort and pain and whatever, that because your body is trying to manage the garbage that you keep eating because it's not supposed to be in there. So if we want to feel better, we have to like let ourselves understand what my body is actually doing with the foods that we eat. So upstate Nick's fan is just chiming in with the fact that taking the carbs out helped you to lose weight because we went from 235 to 187, and that your knees feel much better. That is very, very, very cool. Thank you very much. You can go below and subscribe and like if you'd like to. And I'm just under the video. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let's see. So Sing It says, okay, that's a conversation not for me. Okay, let's see. So I'm looking for questions. Oh, here's some questions. I was carnivore for many months, and I don't drink alcohol. However, had first date for a few years, so was very nervous. I had a pint of cider, but halfway through, I passed out on the table. I wasn't not really sure where you're going with that. I wasn't drunk, but no way to stay awake. I guess it was insulin spike, but can you explain if this was dangerous or just shed some light? Okay, so it sounds like you hadn't drank for a long time though, right? You said you don't drink. So if you, I mean, you don't drink, but you had a pint of cider, which I'm assuming you're saying some kind of like there was a little bit of alcohol in that. Is that possible? Or if it was like, was there sugar in that? Because that's another thing. Sometimes we don't realize that sugar can actually cause problems if we don't have it for a long time. Like, I can't remember which doctor was saying this. Might have been Dr. Westman. I'm not sure. But he was saying like sometimes they'll ask you to do that glucose test. And he was pointing out that you need to let them know that you don't do sugar, like at all. Like they need to understand your situation, that you really don't do sugar. Because, yeah, you don't want to ingest something that's going to throw your body into shock. Because, yeah, the average person can drink that sugar solution and I guess they're fine. But not everybody, not someone who's never had sugar can do that, if that makes sense. So saying that, I don't know what happened to you. But I'm gonna make the guess that somehow, since you passed out, that's telling me that you maybe became hypoglycemic for some reason, but I'm not sure. I have no idea. Like, I think you probably should reach out to Dr. Barry if you can, or to reach out to, like, I would reach out to any of the keto doctors, Dr. Sivis, probably even, like, to try to see if they can answer that question. I would love for you to come back and tell me what they told you, because I don't know why cider would do that. I'm assuming this is apple cider. I'm not sure why it would do that. But again, if you've been, what did you say, carnivore? Yeah, I know for myself, now that I'm carnivore only even for 2 months, I would not drink anything that was high in alcohol or sugar, like especially not quickly. That just seems like a recipe for disaster. So, Ange, this is a good question. What I would encourage you to do is get a food tracking app and open it up and put your meats in there and see, like, so for example, I don't have my app in front of me, but I believe the last time I checked, like a pound of meat, like so let's say it was pork or chicken or beef or something, like a pound of meat was bringing you somewhere close to 90. But Pat, if you're there, if you can chime in, I would appreciate that. But like those numbers are are those numbers are like, you'll see them in the calculator. So that's your easiest way to know how much protein you should be taking in. You just go in and put it in, and then you can be able to see, like, so if you're eating one meal a day, you'll be able to see that's how much you'd have to eat in a day. If you're eating more than one meal, then you can spread it out over the course of your day, but you know how much meat you need to take in, because it's not one to one, right? Like I think in the article that we just went through, they said something like 3 ounces of meat was giving 21 grams of protein or something like that, if I'm remembering that correctly. So you do need to eat a good amount to get all of it in. On a normal day, I eat about a pound of meat per day with 4 eggs on top of that. And sometimes I'll add either scallops or bacon or something else to it to make my numbers make sense. But I don't remember, like, for each one what the number is. I've just gotten into the habit of eating this way now, and I don't even like, yeah, so I just know that that's what I'm going to eat. And if I'm a little bit hungry, I'll put some scallops or some bacon on it. If I'm not hungry, then I don't bother. So oftentimes I'll just have the eggs plus whatever meat. And I'm cooking all of that in butter. So like it's a very satiating one meal. Hello, Eva. I'm very happy that they're helpful to you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Roxanne. I love talking about it. So the more I can talk about it, the better. And it looks like Pat answered your question. I didn't see it, but yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Pat, for answering the question. Yes, sing it. I thank you for that. My time is increasing on the rebounder, and I'm excited for myself. I'm very, very excited for myself. So Eva is saying that you are a senior at 61 officially, but I feel stronger and healthier than when I was 25. Do you feel healthier than you did when you were younger? Curious, wondering how old you are. Yeah, I'm not 60 yet. I'm how the heck I'll never remember how old I am, but I'm at beginning of 50, so I'm 52. I can't never remember how old I am. But anyways, I'm early 50s, and I do feel stronger. I do feel more energized. But it's over time I keep doing level ups. And so then it feels normal again, right? Like I just feel like, oh, this, but the thing is, my normal doesn't feel painful. So my normal used to feel painful. Like I was just used to being physically in pain all the time and just living my life that way. So I do see where now that I'm eating properly, and now that I'm like fueling my body properly, so it's like getting the proper protein, the proper fat, it's not getting all the garbage, I feel like I just did another level up. And it's only been 2 months. So I'm like, I'm kind of cautiously walking forward. I want to see how this all plays out, because I do feel like there might be more changes to come. And I feel the other thing that after doing the video with Sally Norton and learning that oxalate dumping can happen anywhere between a week later, 2 weeks later to 2 years later, I'm cautiously waiting to see, am I going to have any oxalate dumping? Because if I do, obviously, then I'm going to need to address that. But to the moment, I feel great. And like I said, I'm jumping, I'm doing stuff, I'm constantly moving around and being busy. And even this, like I'm doing this video, I feel like I'm excited to talk to you guys about how you possibly can change and improve your health as well. And I think that for a lot of people, especially people on medication, like that zip and zest for life just is not as obviously there as it, like when they were younger, like you're saying, like back when they were 25. That's sad. And I think if we talk about this more, we're going to get to the place where more people are going to understand that we can feel amazing. Like, and we'll stop calling 60 middle age. Because that's the other thing too, is that, I remember being a very small child and saying to my parents that, oh man, I hope I can live to be 100. I remember saying that to them. And they smile and laugh and say, yeah, if you eat your vegetables, blah, 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 you'll live to that, not trying to hurt my feelings and help me to understand that most people don't do that. But then I find out that according to our telomeres, which are these these tail ends on our DNA that tell how long an animal or a being, there's not just animals, like there's sea creatures, whatever, how long these things should live. Apparently, for humans, we should be living to 120. So, like 61 being called our senior years when theoretically it's just midlife. Yeah, we need to change that. Like that shouldn't be. And for me, that's how I'm going to look at it. Whenever I turn 60, that's my midpoint, because theoretically I've got another 60 to go. And I'm planning to make that 60. And so, that goal I had in my head as a kid of living to 100 because I thought it was a big number. And now I'm thinking, well, can I make it to 130? And that's my new goal. And I want it to be all of your goal. We shouldn't be looking at these small numbers and believing that that's all we can do. And just saying that you really dislike macro apps. I started keto because I wanted the simple way getting healthy and lose weight. But I go carnivore and I find it confusing. I guess I have to embrace it. So, Ange, the thing that I would say is that, especially if you're carnivore, what you need to know is how much of what that you can have. So even if you go into the macro app or you go even to Google and just Google like how much protein, fat, and carb is not going to show anything, but it might show a point something depending on what spices. You still need to know what spices you're using and take that into account. But if you just go and for whatever meats you cook, then because now your life is simpler. So what meats do you cook? And you write down, okay, so when I'm having beef, I need to have this amount. All you need now is a scale to know for beef, it's this amount, for chicken, it's this amount, for fish is this amount, right? For eggs, it's this many. Eggs is hard to do it with, but maybe you're having eggs with the stuff. So if I add bacon, bacon is adding this much. You just need to write it down in a way that it's going to work for you. You can even write it on something pretty, put it in your kitchen and just have it there that this is how much it is, right? And it's easy. That way you don't have to frustrate yourself with not knowing. I think the most important thing is even understanding that all of these things that we're talking about, they're all approximations anyway, right? So we're using the numbers to help us to focus, to gauge, to move towards the good thing. For myself, when I buy ground meat, I separate it into 1 pound, so 454 gram sections. That's it. Well, sometimes I am getting down to maybe I'm going to do 450, blah, 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 blah. And I just bang it out. When I do the math of the container, right? Maybe some other times I'm going to aim at 455 when I do the math of the container, like, oh, I can probably get this much if I divide it this way. But I'm always trying to make sure I at a minimum have 450 grams of meat in each container. And if it's a bit over, it's 460, 470 per container, depending on how big the pack of meat was. That's okay. When I buy like pork chops and that kind of thing, or right, like if I pull it out, it's like I'm trying to match two of them together that give me about the weight that's about a pound of meat per day. That's what I'm looking for you to do. It's not about, especially when you're a carnivore, you're right. It does get easier because the truth is, if all we're eating is meat seasoned with butter and salt, there really isn't a big need to know the carb count. There isn't a big need to even track the fat, because when you're eating it, at some point, your body's going to be like, whoa, that's enough. And you're going to stop and you're done. Right? So I want you to think about it more from that perspective. It's something that you're going to do once because you're carnivore. Now, if you tell me that you're going to go back to keto, then you kind of need to track these things, because there's no way that you're going to memorize all the different veg that you have, but you pretty much could do it. You could do it for the meats, and you'll know how much to put on your plate. So Sing It says, do you think because you inadvertently weaned yourself off of plants long before you went to carnivore that you won't dump oxalates? Probably already have. I think that that's a possibility. So here's where my mind is. I do think that I'm dumping, or like dumping is the wrong word. Do I think I'm releasing oxalates? Yes, 100%. And like there were a few little things that like maybe when I switched over to carnivore that I noticed, and I was like, oh, that's like I had a small little rash that showed up, and I'm like, oh, but then it kind of just like, it wasn't gigantic. It was a small little rash. I was like, oh, okay. I hadn't put it together until I spoke to Sally that, oh, maybe that's what my body's doing. It's just like a little rash. I did not have crystals coming out of it. Nothing like that. Just a small little rash, right? So I feel like for every person, we're going to manage the story differently. But one thing that Sally was very clear about is that regardless of whether you dump or you slowly let them go, if you don't eat the offending foods, your body will let them go because you're being rebuilt every day, right? Like every single day, my body's rebuilding something, and that means it's letting go of some of those oxalates. So, that was one thing that changed. Talk about that. When I diminished the amount of veg that I was eating. So before I became carnivore, but after I did that 2 months of carnivore and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to bring it back. When I got to the point where I was eating basically avocado and olives, and that was all I was having as my veg, I stopped having frequent urination at night. So I used to go to the bathroom at least 2 times, typically 3. And now I can actually sleep through the night and just go in the morning. It's so nice. And it wasn't until I spoke to Sally that I even understood why that was happening. But apparently, that's one of the signs that you might have an oxalate issue, is that you're that frequent urination thing that happens to people. So I was really happy to figure that one out too. I'm so happy that that was helpful to you, Eva, and I'm glad that you're noticing. I would love for you to start calling yourself middle-aged. We should all, when we get to 60, it's middle-aged. It's not, we're not seniors. That's crazy. Especially when we're feeling the way that we feel. That's not seniors. So times when you don't feel well could have been dumping. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that I don't know, right? Like, I think I didn't have a word for it. And I mean, some of the times that I didn't feel well were explained, right? When I had that 2020 thing, or like, so there some of the times were explained. So I have caught colds, and I mean, our kids still go off to C shop. So like, we still are in the position where we can get sick from our kids. So that does happen. But for sure, I will say that like I've had great improvements because like I said, the whole not waking up in the middle of the night thing, love that. And yeah, the rash is like the one that comes to me right now that I can think of. There's probably other things if I were to sit down and think about it. But that's the other thing, is that I didn't even know that those things could be because of oxalates. The first time I even was reintroduced to the idea of oxalates was when I did my interview with Holly, and she mentioned oxalate dumping, and it was like, oh, I have to look that up. But I hadn't heard about that since the time I heard Sally speak, which was years before, like 2018, I want to say, when I heard her speak. And beyond letting go of almonds, I didn't, and all my keto snacks that I was making. Beyond that, I didn't do much with that information. So let's see. Amadita, you said you're a 50-year-old taking meds for high cholesterol, hyperthyroidism. What do I recommend? What I recommend is that you find a keto-friendly doctor to work with if you want to do keto or carnivore, because when you're on medication and you start eating properly, the medication becomes too strong. And yeah, that's not a safe thing for you to do on your own. You need someone to help you to know when to cut down the medication and all that stuff. So I would really encourage you to find a doctor to work with that can help you with that process. So I will also add, Amadita, that fish is fine to eat if that's your best source and you're comfortable eating fish. It's fine to eat. The carbohydrates are more likely what's giving the issue, and there's nothing wrong with eating other meats, but we all need to do our thing. My concern for you is the medication. Like the medication is, it needs to be, you need someone monitoring. Maybe even your pharmacist might be able to work with you on that. But I don't know, again, like for some medications, pharmacists will help you. And for other things, they're like, no, you need to talk to your doctor. So you might start with your pharmacist and see if they're willing to help you to figure out like when you would need to diminish them if you diminish your carb intake. Part of the reason I make these videos, Wellness Warriors, is for exactly this. It is better for us to start doing these healthy things before we get on medication. Because once we're on medication, that company has us, right? Because that medication is doing huge things in your body, huge things. And if you change the medication, you impact your health. So it's not something that you should take lightly. And you really should try your best to work with someone, a doctor, work with a doctor to get that under control, right? A lot of doctors today, I've been hearing more and more about keto, and they understand that people are doing amazing things if they stick to the diet. You only get the amazing results if you stick to the diet. If you go back to eating the food afterwards, the problems come back. But if you stick to the diet, whether it's keto or carnivore, people are seeing amazing results. Carnivore, I do believe, is easier in the sense that once you get there, if you stay there, 99% of your temptations fall. They're no longer there, right? If you struggle to stay there, or if you do keto and you struggle to stay keto, that's when there could be complications, because you've allowed yourself to eat the fat that's on your meat and that comes with your chicken and all that stuff. But then you go back to adding those high carb foods. That's a recipe for disaster. So my suggestion is make sure you have the support that you're going to need to stick with the healthy way of eating. So that means getting around people who are also doing what you want to do. For example, I would encourage you to join the Wellness Squad as well. Pat, if you want to throw the link for the Wellness Squad in so people can join if they would like to, that would be great. I would encourage you to join the Wellness Squad so you can get around people like you who you can ask questions to and talk to. But ultimately, if you are on medication, you still need your doctor to help you out. And that means doing the healthy, like that means finding the doctor that can help you to do the healthy thing, right? So maybe you're going to talk to your doctor or find a new doctor. Maybe you're going to reach out to a doctor in the space, like one of the keto friendly doctors in the space. But you need to have someone helping you through that like coming down on the medication. Okay. So GV7 is saying, that's why I wanted to start making healthier choices earlier. I don't want to be on medication at age 60. What are some simple things I can do now as a high school athlete? Depends on, so first of all, I want to say keto is healthy. Carnivore is healthy. Like the number one thing, if you're like a high school athlete, which says to me you're under 18, stop eating junk food. Honestly, at your age, if you put down junk food and just eat real whole foods, and of course, lean towards the real whole foods that don't taste sweet. If you're going to put something beside your meat, put the thing beside your meat that doesn't taste sweet. So I would go for you know what? I made a video the other day talking about the fact that when our ancestors were doing what they were doing, they were able to eat stuff that were starches, and they didn't have the huge impact on their health that they have on our health today. The problem is we also understood back then, like way back, that starches were not something you should consume in large amounts. So I feel like part of the problem today, especially with young people who are trying to be healthy, is that we don't know where the negatives are coming from. Now I'm learning that potatoes and rice have so much oxalate, that grains have so much oxalate, that there's so many things that have oxalate that we've been notoriously putting on our plate, but those oxalates are harming our health. So GV7, I would just say start with cutting out the junk food. And then after you've cut out the junk food, if you just focus on eating the right amount of meat for your body, and that's what you focus on, you're probably going to do amazing, right? Normally, I talk to adults, not children and teenagers. So I think you should also be talking with your parents about these choices that you're making to make sure that they can help you, to make sure that you get the medical follow-up, to make sure that everything's on track with you. Even though, yes, keto and carnivore are healthy and they're healthier than the standard American diet, this is not medical advice, right? This is just me saying that those are data points that we know are true. You need to have I would encourage you to talk to your parents about changes that you want to make to your health. So, are there any other questions? So Brunette, sorry, I'm not sure to say that, but is saying, can I talk about keto flu when starting keto? Is there a way to minimize it? Yes, there are ways to minimize it, but first of all, I'm just going to say this. I didn't minimize it. I didn't know that it was going to happen. So because I didn't minimize it, I lived through keto flu, which took about 2-3 days, and it didn't feel good. It felt really, really bad. But I want to point something out. Number one, we need to stop lying and calling it keto flu. It's not keto flu. It's withdrawal symptoms. That's what you're having. You're having withdrawal symptoms. So that's part one. So I lived those withdrawal symptoms, and by living them, it helped me to understand that I actually had a problem with carbohydrates. There are a lot of people that do the thing I'm about to tell you, and they don't live those keto flu symptoms. But then by doing this thing I'm about to tell you and not living it, they don't truly see how not good it is to be in this carbohydrate chasing place, which then allowed them to let the carbs back in. I haven't let the carbs back in. I honestly think partially because how horrible that keto withdrawal was for me. And that realization when I got to the other side of it, that I lived withdrawal symptoms, really helped me to understand that no, I don't want to be in that situation ever again. Therefore, those foods can never come back to my life. I think that's valuable. But if you don't want to live that, the thing you can do is add extra salt to your food before you have any symptoms. Part of the reason that we have that withdrawal is because when the sugar drops, because we're not eating it or not eating as much of it, and we have much less sugar in our blood, we are able to start letting go of the extra water that we've been holding on to. And when we let go of that water, the interesting thing that happens when we let go of that water is we also let go of a lot of electrolytes. So a lot of other minerals that were in our, calcium, magnesium, all the minerals. So some of the minerals go, and that's where we start having a bunch of negative repercussions on us. If we lower the sugar but increase the salt, salt also holds water. So you don't lose water weight as quickly. So it takes longer to lose the water weight. But in that process of losing the water weight less quickly, so slower, you also don't have as much of the withdrawal symptoms. You still might have a little bit, but not to the way that you would have had them if you would have just let your body just like dump that water because you took the sugar out of your diet. So if there are people here who haven't hit that like button yet, I'd really appreciate it. Just like hit the like button, help me out. And I'm sure that this is good information that you're still here. So are there any more questions? So you're asking how much meat you should be eating. It's interesting that your name is Chocolate, by the way. But you're saying how much meat you should be eating, and you keep switching back and forth. I'm assuming you're saying between keto and carnivore. First of all, I think that is probably easier to understand how much meat your body needs if you do one diet, and then that way you could choose a way to eat that's going to make sense. So if you choose keto, the amount of carbohydrate on the plate doesn't ever change, right? It has to be less than 20 grams for the entire day. In which case, then you're looking at the meat, and you want to put enough meat on the plate that you're eating to satiation. So by the time you finish eating the meat and the vegetables, you should be feeling satisfied. Like you're not stuffed, you're not full, you're just satisfied. Here's the thing though. Most people, when they do this, they're eating back and forth, meat, veg, meat, veg, meat, veg, and they end up finishing both at the same time. I don't encourage people to do that because carbohydrates allow you to eat more meat, first of all. But second of all, if I'm eating carbohydrates, I'm kind of filling my stomach up with stuff that's not meat. However much meat you have on your plate, you should be eating that first, and it should be finished before the veg, so that just in case you have enough, that you don't end up finishing the veg before the meat and leaving meat behind. So if you're going to leave anything behind, it should always be veg. That's number one. But number two, and this is the other important thing here, right, is that you can experiment with putting more meat, less veg, and see how you make it through. Like, am I able to finish that? And do I still finish this? Because what I noticed for myself is that if I was able to finish the meat and the veg, there wasn't enough meat on my plate. Usually I'm throwing a little bit of veg away when I was first doing keto at the very, very beginning. And then eventually I was eating so little veg, it didn't matter. And therefore I was eating that much more meat. And even with that, I still learned. So for example, 4 chicken thighs, and not teeny tiny ones, like good size ones, or, like 2 good sized pork chops, or like I was eating, I would say I was probably close to like 350, 400 grams of meat of some kind every day when when I wasn't having veg on my plate. Right. And then when I was having veg on my plate, I would have like 1 pork chop and some meat. And eventually I started to realize, as I learned more and more about the importance of the animal protein, that I'm letting myself eat fun food rather than eat what's healthy. And that's part of the reason that those changes happened. For you, if you're going to do veg, satiation. If you're not doing veg and you're just going to eat the meat, so you said you're trying to do carnivore, then you put as much on your plate as you want and you eat until your body says, stop. Ugh. Right. And it's interesting, but it does happen. And for me, it only used to happen with ribs. Ribs are very fatty, right? And so when I would be eating ribs, whereas when I was eating ribs with veg, I could get through that whole rack and eat with the veg, so I could get through that whole rack. For some reason, take the veg off the plate and I try to get through the full rack and I couldn't get through it. And that's the first time that I actually experienced what Dr. Chaffee talked about, where if you're only eating meat, your body will stop you. And I honestly thought I was starting to dislike meat, or ribs, I should say, specifically ribs. And I realized, no, that's not what was going on. My body was just saying, hey, you had enough. Somehow eating veg blocks that ability to happen for us. And so the flip side of the coin is, if you don't feel that when you get to the end of your meal, it probably means you didn't have enough meat or food, like meat on your plate. Right? So if you're just doing carnivore, you probably have a lot more room to move there where it comes to meat. But if you need to pick one, because if you keep jumping back and forth, then sometimes you're going to be eating to full on the keto way of eating, and that's not a great idea. Or at least according to Dr. Westman, we should be eating to satiation when we do the keto way of eating. When we do carnivore, according to Dr. Dr. Baker and Dr. Berry, we eat to slightly full. Or if you go with Dr. Chaffee, you eat until you get the feeling, and then that tells you you've had enough. I hope that makes sense. If this is a real question, Max, the real answer is you don't need to do anything special, because your body digests meat so well that it will flow through like it's normally supposed to. If you think about it, most carnivores in the wild don't have to take anything special to go to the washroom. As long as you're eating properly, so the meat and the fat that comes along with it, bathroom is not a problem. Thank you. I'm glad the answer was helpful. Thank you very much for asking for those likes. I really do appreciate that. You know, I don't know which one you have, but what I will say is the number one thing that I would encourage you to think about is how you're going to manage the stressors in your life. Before you look at food, how am I managing the stressors in my life? Because we know that when we're eating, not because of, like, those eating situations are not because of wanting to eat. It's the way that you self-soothe. It's the way that you take care of yourself. It's the way that you feel better. And so what we're really trying to do is manage those problems that are in your life that are causing you to need to take care of yourself this way. What is very interesting to me is that when we solve problems, that desire to self-soothe with food diminishes. Now, we add to this that if I've taken a decision that I'm going to eat only healthy food, and I'm not only just going to eat healthy food, I'm going to eat the right amount of healthy food, right? So now I'm talking to myself at the level of not trying to lose weight, because we can't force our body to lose weight. This is part of the crazy thing that our world has told us is there that's not there. You can't force your body to lose weight. Your body loses weight when you eat the correct way. You can't force your body to gain weight. Your body gains weight when you eat the right way, right? Either side of that coin, we cannot force. So if I'm not eating enough, then the answer is eat enough. Well, how do I get myself to eat enough when I'm so stressed and whatever? You're not stressed because of the food. You're stressed because of the problem in your life that you haven't solved. If you're trying to lose weight and you're overeating and you're, well, how can I do that if I only feel good when I eat? It's not true. It's not that you only feel good when you eat. You feel bad because you haven't solved that problem in your life. And so when you think about it, you end up making yourself feel better by eating. Both sides of the story. The answer isn't about the food. The answer is first, solve the stuff that's happening in your life, which means you very likely need to go see somebody, whether it's a psychologist, a social worker, a doctor, who is the person that's going to help you to solve the thing that's really happening, a divorce lawyer. Who's the person that's going to help you to solve the problem in your life, right? Some kind of parenting coach. I don't know. What's the problem that's happening in your life that's leading to you then doing whatever it is that you are currently doing with food? So that's the answer. I could tell you all kinds of things to eat, but it's not going to change your situation yet, because the first thing you need to do is solve the problems that are happening in your life. Ready to Go Home is asking if I've lost weight on this journey. Yes, I have. I've lost. Okay, so how it went. Initially, when I first started this journey, I lost 80 pounds. And then I didn't like the way that I looked. I thought I was like too thin, and I didn't like the way my face looked. So I put back on 10. And then last year, Pat and I and the kids went on vacation. And where we were, they only had lean cuts of meat. So I had to eat much more than I normally would have to eat to kind of get to feel satiated, to feel not even satiated, to feel like I've eaten enough. And so I ended up eating quite a bit of lean protein. Like really, I actually had 2 meals each day and was really putting as much as I could on my plate to try to feel okay. And when I came home, I was 5 pounds lighter. So I'm currently 75 pounds lighter than when I started this journey. Thank you, Chocolate. I'm glad that my question answered your question. I believe that's why you're saying yes. Thank you. And yes, thank you, Pat, for pointing out the fact that yes, the cool thing about all of this is not that I've lost weight, because I've lost weight in the past doing regular low fat, eat properly diets. And I never kept the weight off. So it's been 6 years and I was stable at 70 down until more recently that I'm stable at 75 down. And that's, by the way, why I started the challenge that I did, which you can check out on my channel. It's called the Egg Challenge for anybody who hasn't seen it. I did that challenge for myself because I was trying to figure out, like, how is it possible that I lost weight even though I ate more? And so I came home and I'm going to eat more again. And I just added 4 eggs on top of my normal meals that I would eat always. And I'm still in that challenge right now because I decided to keep it going forward because I want to see like what will happen if I do this for 6 months. But after a month, you can go check out that video. The results came in and surprise, surprise. So I think it's a very interesting video. And I talk about some of the other things I noticed because other things did happen and change. And I feel like that's what's really, really cool is that when our body gets what it needs, it levels up. And then if you give it something else that it needs, it levels up. I did not know that my body needed more protein. I thought, and honestly, I already thought I ate a lot. I eat more. So how many months ago? 6, 7 months ago, before August, when I went on that vacation, I was eating more than I had ever eaten before the 6 years when I was on a weight gain path. Standard Canadian diet, gaining weight left, right, and center. And I was eating less than when I went keto and started to eat healthy. I was eating more food than I'd ever eaten in my life and losing weight. Part one. And then I do this thing I go on vacation and again eat more because like I could tell everything was so dry. It was so not like the only thing that I was able to get that had any kind of fat in it was sausages in the morning at breakfast and bacon. And the eggs were even watered down, like how they put milk in everything. Oh, that was driving me crazy. I couldn't get them to just make me a regular straight out egg. They weren't doing that. So it was always scrambled eggs. And can I just say that yes, it's crazy to me that I eat more now and I don't have any veg on my plate. And I told you what I eat. I can do a pound of meat, 4 eggs. Sometimes I add bacon. Sometimes I add scallops, like depending on how I feel, every single day. So it's really important for us to truly understand that if you give your body what it needs, it will do what it's supposed to do. It's going to help and repair and do all the things. And if you don't need food, it's going to tell you that you don't need food. Like there was a day when I first added more food where I got a certain distance in and my body was just like, yeah, you don't need food today. And I could just feel it. Like I didn't need food that day. I wasn't hungry. I never got a hungry moment. Like not even a hungry moment all day long. I just was fine. And then the next day I ate. Now, I haven't had another day like that, interestingly. I don't know why that one happened, but maybe it's just like, again, adaptation or whatever. But I have really learned to listen to my body. Just listen. If my body wants something, I give it. If my body doesn't want something, I don't give it. That's why I'm still 1 meal a day, because until my body says, oh, I think you can have some food, I'm not going to get food. And I think if we would all do that, we would see where our health would definitely improve. So, Max, thank you. And I appreciate that. And yeah, so ready to go home. The question is, with the 80 pounds weight loss, do I have loose skin? So interestingly, I did. And I mean, so halfway to a century, I had loose skin when I lost the weight. And then I feel like it's going away. Go watch the video with the egg thing, because it's kind of crazy how quickly things can progress. I had always said in my videos that loose skin, of course you can do surgeries to get rid of loose skin. And depending on how much weight you lost, you could have a lot of loose skin. Like that can be like really large amounts. But I've always encouraged people to consider that when we stop eating the wrong foods, our body starts healing us, fixing us. And one of the things that it will do is it recycles, right? And so I've always been really interested to see, like, when my body is internally healed, because that's the other thing that's important for us to understand. Your body doesn't care what you look like. Your body cares that you're strong on the inside to take it as far into the future as possible. So we're looking at what we weigh. We're looking at our loose skin. We're looking at, like rashes and whatever. And your body is like, yeah, don't care. If making a rash gets this toxin out from inside to outside, your body's going to do it. And if you having loose skin means that if your body's going to have to choose between getting rid of loose skin or fixing your heart, your loose skin is going to stay there. Our body is smarter than us. And it's focusing on what's the most important. So I've always said, what's going to happen? I'm so sure for myself that when my internals are cleaned up, my body will work on the loose skin. And I feel so good. I don't mind the loose skin. Like, it's there. I know it's there. And what will happen is that I dress appropriately. So I'm not dressing in a way that, like I just dress appropriately so that it's not as obvious. But I will say that yes, in a short period of time, shorter than I was expecting, my loose skin is less. So I started the challenge, and inside of a month even, I noticed that my arms look different. But Pat noticed it too, and he said it before me. My brain wasn't even on that. I did not think that that was going to be something that could be changed anytime soon. So I wasn't looking for that to be part of what would happen with that egg challenge. And yet somehow there's improvement. Now, what am I going to say? There's zero loose skin right now? No, there's still a little bit, but nowhere. Like, it's not what it was before. I can't say nowhere near, but it's not what it was before, and it's noticeable. So that's fun for me because it's not something that I was expecting to happen, and I was definitely not expecting to happen that quickly. So yeah, apparently if you just keep eating healthy, and apparently if you add eggs, I don't know, Lee mentioned in one of the interviews that I did, Lee mentioned that when you eat eggs, I think he said they needed to be raw. I don't eat raw eggs. I do cook them, but like over easy, so they're slightly raw. He said that that helps with recovery. It helps with like regenerating the body, etc. So again, part of the reason that I chose eggs as what I was doing. So I would definitely, I think it's worth a try. Like, just keep going with it. Okay, so I would say, Libra, that my answer, I'm good with my answer, and I hope that answer helped you. And yeah, I hope that was a good answer for you to work with your doctors and the people in your life who can help you with that. So it took me, as Singit answered, 5 months. I started in April 20th. Yeah, and I think by September 20th or something, like 5 months later, April, May, June, July, yes, September 20th, I had lost the 80 pounds. So do I have, sing it. Okay. V, you must do an excellent job at not letting Patrick see that. Okay. Um, okay. So it looks to me like we have gotten to the end of our questions. Thank you. If you don't mind, share this with people that you think could be help. It could help. Since you're here, you made it to the end, share the video, because I think that will help more people. And also it does help with YouTube sharing it out to more people. So I really would appreciate it if you guys could do that. I'm going to link the video. The video is already linked in the description, but I'm going to link it at the end once I'm able to process this. Um, have a great rest of your day, guys. Enjoy Easter Monday for those of you who get to have that day off. And I will talk to you very, 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 very soon. Next Monday, as a matter of fact. Bye.